Hey, what's up? Zach here, and this is the ultimate tennis shoe buyer's guide for the start of 2024 and end of 2023 for every foot type, game style, or injury or chronic condition you might be bringing to the tennis court. Here we go. And remember, with the ultimate tennis shoe guide videos, this is all about what is the best shoe for your particular issues. Let's say you have a wide foot with heel pain and you're a serve and volleyer. All you gotta do is look for the shoe that shows up in all three of those categories or in the majority of those categories. That's usually gonna be the shoe that I find best for that. So it's a really easy way to customize this guide for you. And if you are somebody in very unique circumstances and just not been able to get a simple straight answer as to either what shoe to buy, what socks to get, orthotics, or really anything else might be on your mind regarding your particular foot or ankle, I do offer one-on-one consulting in the description below, so make sure you check that out. And if you're looking for a place to buy any of these shoes that I listed down below, I will have a link in the description below as well. All right, but let's get this edition of the guide started with number one, foot type. And if you're someone, say, like Roger Federer with a really wide foot, you're going to want a shoe that is pretty wide lasted. The best shoes for this obviously are shoes that will come in multiple widths, like a 2E or 4E for men, or a C or D for women. Now, you can also get a shoe that just comes wide lasted, like the Diadora Blue Shield 2002 or the On Roger Pro. And speaking of women being able to go to a C or a D, remember, if you are a woman with a wide foot and you want to get your standard size in a wider shoe, you can just get the men's version of the shoe. It'll come a lot of times a little bit wider. In some models, the lasts are the same if they say unisex sizing. However, if there's a men's and women's, usually that men's version will be just a hair wider, and that brings me to narrow feet. So if you are a male tennis player looking for a narrow shoe, you can always go with the women's standard size, and that'll narrow the shoe down a little bit for you. Or just go with a shoe that is a little bit more narrow lasted, like the Yawn X Power Cushion Eclipsean 4. And if you've gotten your feet measured and they are just true or standard width, then really anything on the market besides the really wide or the really narrow is going to be fine for you. Something like the Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour, Diadora B Icon 2, New Balance 996 V5 in the D width. And if you're somebody with a high arch foot or someone that has a really loud footstep, that's usually how you can tell someone has a pretty high arch foot, you're going to want to go with something with a lot of padding in the heel as well as in the forefoot, something pretty forgiving there. Something like the Lotto Raptor Hyperpulse 100 or once again the Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour. And if you have a flatter arch, if you've watched this guide before, you'll know what I'm about to say. Typically, those are kind of the same shoes. In someone with a flat foot, you do want a shoe with a little bit more of a stout shank in it. That way it can, hoist the foot up. One of my favorites for this is once again the Lotto Raptor Hyperpulse 100 or something like the Asics Gel Resolution 9 with just a really stout midsole foam setup. And if you fall somewhere in the middle between a flat and a high arch like most people do, really it's dealer's choice if you want something with a little more tightly tuned suspension like the Diadora B Icon 2 or something with a little bit more loose suspension like the New Balance 996 V5, which feels a little more buttery underfoot. All right, let's move on to the next category, and that is game style. Now, if you're a serve and volleyer, you're going to want something that number one can go north to south really easily, but number two at least has some side-to-side stability for getting those really quick volleys or getting really down low for volleys. Something like the Lotto Mirage 100 or Adidas Cybersonic is a great pickup. And at the way opposite end of that spectrum, if you are a hard court slider, you're going to want a shoe, number one, that can withstand the friction, the heat of hard court sliding, but number two, a shoe that allows efficient enough sliding to actually make it a part of your game. Something like the Nike Vapor Pro 2, Nike Vapor 11, or my favorite, the Asics Gel Resolution 9. And if you're somebody that likes to play a big serve plus one game, you want a shoe that's pretty resilient for that serve, because normally you're going to be popping off the ground pretty hard on that serve and then having to plant for that next shot. Something like, once again, the Asics Gel Resolution 9, Diadora Blue Shield 2002, really anything with a pretty stout, stiff shank underneath of you to, number one, get you up off the ground really easily, but number two, keep you nice and centered and balanced once you're back on the ground to hit that next big shot. Now, if you're someone who's winning matches by just engaging in wars of attrition, you're more of a baseline grinder, you're going to want something pretty resilient to go side to side with. Someone like Coco Gauff or Daniel Medvedev wears shoes that are pretty good for this. The New Balance Coco CG1 or the Lacoste AGLT 23 Ultra, both very good at number one, giving you a lot of push-off force side to side, but also shoes that aren't too encumbering to where when you are moving back and forth all the time, you're not feeling like you got lead bricks under your foot. And so it's no coincidence the best shoes for baseline grinders are also kind of the best shoes for speed. There are some in there that, more meant for speed north to south. And that's where if you're looking just for a straight speed shoe, I would look at the serve and volley category as well as the baseline grinding category and speed category, kind of find out which ones are best for the speed you're looking for. Now, if you're someone who's playing a more all-court game and needs to get your body contorted into some pretty weird pockets of the court and get out of the way of the ball in some pretty weird circumstances, something like the K-Swiss Speed Track is a really good shoe, the New Balance 996 V5, the Asics Gel Resolution 9. Those are really all shoes that allow a lot of degrees of freedom, but also they're sturdy enough to keep you centered when you finally do plant and get ready for that next shot, no matter kind of what angle you're trying to get off the ball. And if you're someone that might be playing on clay plus hard or hard true plus hard or plus carpet, a really durable pair of clay court shoes is going to be probably your best option. Number one, the Asics Gel Resolution 9 clay. Number two, the Nike Vapor Pro 2 clay are really good. Just remember, if you're using clay shoes on a hard court, do not try to slide. That is one way to really tear up a knee, so just watch out for that. If you can, you just might want to get your favorite shoe in a clay model as well as in a hard court model. That will usually solve things for you. And it's no coincidence that the best shoes for carpet and grass are also herringbone. It's just a lot of clubs will not allow you to play with herringbone on grass. I have tried before and failed. However, on carpet, the herringbone does work very well. So it just really is kind of club dependent if you can wear those types of shoes on grass. And if you are playing mostly on grass, it might be worth it to invest in a pair of nub shoes. And if you're someone playing primarily doubles, you want a shoe that's really good in confined spaces, but also a shoe that, is pretty comfortable. So something like the Diadora Blue Shield Torneo 2, again, Asics Gel Resolution 9 is a really good pickup. I've actually found that the New Balance Coco CG1 is an outstanding double shoe. I know, she's a really good doubles player, Coco is, but I've found that that shoe is really good with number one serve and volleying, but number two confined spaces, especially up at net. That shoe is incredibly nimble, but also incredibly protective. And if you're looking for the best shoes for pickleball, I actually do have a video breaking down my top shoes for indoor and outdoor pickleball that is in the description below. But suffice to say, most all-court tennis shoes and most tennis shoes that are good for doubles usually are good for pickleball. And that brings us to the third category, injuries, body type, and chronic conditions. If you're one of the many tennis players that suffer from heel pain, it's probably the number one thing I see in my office, for tennis players besides bloody toenails or ingrown toenails. You're gonna want something with, number one, a pretty supportive ankle collar, and heel counter around your foot to stop that micro motion, as well as a stout but forgiving heel. Something like the Lotto Raptor Hyperpulse 100 Mizuno Wave and Force Tour. And if you're someone that's suffering from painful flat foot, arch strain, arch pain, tendinitis, a lot of those shoes that are good for heel pain also are good for this condition, just because you need the same thing, stout but forgiving support as well as cushioning. But when you're looking for a shoe for Achilles tendinitis, because that is also so common amongst tennis players because of the biomechanics of the serve, you really want something that in the back of the shoe is just really not allowing a ton of micro motion back there, something with a lot of really good padding around the Achilles tendon on both sides of it. Something, number one, that's going to absorb a lot of shock, but also a shoe that can accept an orthotic or a brace. And speaking of conditions that need braces, if you are someone who's a chronic ankle sprainer, you're going to want a shoe with, number one, a really stout lateral flange, something that's going to keep that shoe stable on the lateral side or outside, but also a shoe with stout enough foam underneath of you to keep the structure of the shoe intact when you're going side to side really hard, something that's not going to buckle over when you're running to one side really hard and then cutting back the other direction. If you're somebody with pain in the ball of your foot, you're going to want something with the forgiveness in the front of the shoe, one of the best of all time, Diadora Blue Shield Torneo 2, that really forgiving Blue Shield foam in the forefoot that disperses energy so well. If you're someone that suffers from shin splints, a lot of the same shoes that are good for heel pain and tendinitis are also good with this, a shoe that's not going to allow a lot of micro motion, and a shoe that's going to allow a lot of efficient push off and efficient running side to side is going to be what's best for that. And if you're someone like Rafa Nadal, who's probably suffering from arthritis, especially in the midfoot and the ankle, just really anything where you've got grinding joints in your foot, you're also going to want a shoe, number one, with a really supportive shank and just something that is going to disperse shock so it's not going up through those joints, and a shoe that can kind of hold its own on court. So one of my favorites is the Basics Gel Resolution 9. So it also stands to reason that the best shoes for arthritis in your foot are some of the same shoes that are good for knee, hip, and back pain. Really shoes that are better at shock absorption than anything else. And if you're a player on the heavier side or have very, very strong legs and put a ton of force into your shoe, you're gonna want something that can harness all that force and not just have crumbling in the midsole after a few weeks of using it. But if you're a very lightweight player, you're not gonna want a shoe to weigh you down. You're gonna want something a little bit easier to get back and forth on the court. Something like the Adidas Barricade 2023 is a really good pickup for that because number one, it's still super supportive, side to side stable, but also light enough and low enough to the ground to where you're not lugging bricks all over the place. And going back to using braces and sleeves for ankle sprainers or tendinitis, if you are someone that does wear orthotics all the time or braces, you're going to want a shoe that does not have a lot of heel slippage issues, so you can actually put something in there and that'll hold that orthotic and brace and allow you to still get a one-to-one fit with the shoe. And speaking of that heel slippage, if you're somebody with narrow heels, who is prone to heel slippage, you're going to want something with a lot of padding on both sides of the Achilles and your ankle. Best shoe on the market for this right now, by far, this is the Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour. And if you're someone that suffers from either excessive sweating, excessive heat, or you just play in excessive heat, you're gonna want a shoe with a ton of breathability. The best ones on the market right now, by far, are the Head Revolt Pro, as well as Sprint Pro, although there are others too that do a good job in the uppers of dispersing heat. It's just that the Sprint Pro and Revolt Pro have that breathing cage underneath of your foot to expel all that hot air right from the source. And if you want a PDF table of all the shoes I have reviewed this year, and including all their heel heights, heel to toe drops, weights, things like that, I do have that as a digital download in the description below. If you have any questions about the categories that I use to review these shoes, or you just want to suggest a new category, also make sure you leave me a comment down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.